There is no doubt over the past 5 weeks, the Panthers had severely improved, but today feels like a regression.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here live on YouTube, where I am live following every Carolina Panthers game throughout the entirety of the regular season. And thanks for listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesday for the next 3 weeks, I'll be answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. Then once the off season begins, it'll be the weekly Friday mailbag. Either way, all you got to do right now is either at me or DM me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Julian Council, to get those questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. The Carolina Panthers 14, the Dallas Cowboys 30. A disappointing performance from the Panthers after 5 weeks where they really had shown improvement. And when asked by Scott Fowler, the Charlotte Observer, after the game, if this was a regression from the previous 5 weeks, Dave Canales, Panthers head coach, said, yes, it was. He also said today simply was about the ball. The Panthers losing a turnover battle 4-1, allowing 10 points off of turnovers, even though they had 7 points off of turnovers on their own, still losing the turnover battle. And quite simply, that's all you need to say about why this game was what it was today. And I had someone text me just asking, do they feel like they're lethargic today? Do you feel the energy? And I wasn't in the building today, so I can't really tell you from the TV in my living room if I can feel the energy or not. It's a dreary day in Carolina. The Cowboys are 5-8. Carolina's still 3-10. Yes, they played close against KC. They played close against Tampa last time at home. Played close last week against Philadelphia. Didn't have the kind of juice you're expecting every time Dallas comes to town, but still not an excuse for a team that really had done a lot of good things over the last couple of weeks to play the way that they played today and to be favored, which doesn't matter that they were favored. And we saw today why it had been 33 games since the Carolina Panthers had been favored by Vegas to win a game. And I don't know if Vegas is going to favor them at all the rest of the way. Looking at it this week, they're already 4.5-point dogs at home next week against Arizona. Wouldn't imagine they'd be favored on the road against Tampa. And then we'll see what things look like after how they play next 2 weeks when they go on the road, the season finale at Atlanta, to see how they're favored. That's not really important. But it was nice to see, for a change, a lot of positive things being said about Bryce Young, about Dave Canales, about this organization, this team, and where they're headed. And all of that doesn't necessarily get washed away, but they certainly took a step back based off how they played today against a Cowboys team that has not been playing well. They lose a tough one on Monday night against Cincinnati. That takes them out of really the wild card picture. And had they won that game, won this one, then Dallas would be heading to the final 3 weeks at 7-7 with a chance to, if they won out, to go to the playoffs. But they don't get that. They don't get that one on Monday. They get the win today, which really didn't mean that much as far as what the rest of their season looks like and whether they can go to the playoffs. But it means a lot, obviously, for Mike McCarthy and Mike Zimmer and that entire coaching staff, and whether they'll be back next year in Dallas. But you look at it for Carolina, as good as they played over the last couple of weeks, as well as they played, rather, the last couple of weeks, they still did several things that cost them and had them 2-3 in their last 5 games. You go back to the game against Kansas City, defensively could not get a stop. Took until 7:01 in the game before they were able to force a punt. Then they forced back-to-back punts. The offense went down the field, led by Bryce Young, tied it. But then the defense of 146 can't get that stop. Mahomes takes him down the field, kick a field goal. I don't think that surprised anybody that much time. That team, knowing how the officials bail them out at every single opportunity, that KC was likely going to go down the field and be able to win that game. But then you look at the Bucs game the next week, they dominated the Bucs for 3 quarters, and they had only given up 181 yards total the first three quarters defensively, one of the better defensive performances we had seen all season long. And then in that fourth quarter, rather, they give 176 yards on offense. 111 of them came from Bucky Irving on 2 drives alone. Panthers were down, but Bryce leads them down the field, finds Adam Thielen for a 25-yard touchdown to go up. 30 seconds left. You're thinking, just got to get a stop. Could not get that stop. They get the stop in overtime. Chuba fumbles, can't get that second stop. They lose that game, a game I felt like they should have won. Then last week against Philadelphia, a Vic Fangio defense that had been excellent all season long. Bryce Young appeared to lead them down the field 97 yards, but Leggett just could not hold on to what would have been the potential game-winning touchdown in that game. So for as well as they were playing, they were still doing things that cost them in those games. Turnovers, drops, the inability to get a timely stop. And we saw all that come together in just a poor performance against Dallas today, where it just comes down to the 4 turnovers by Bryce Young, who had been playing really well and had been the story in Carolina, and why a lot of people had hope for this team in the final 4 weeks and even heading to next season in 2025. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, because Bryce turned ball over 4 times today, that he should not be back in 2025. My position still is, let's let the season play out and then decide what should happen, because what he did the previous 5 weeks does not wash away what he did the first 2 weeks of the season. And it doesn't wash away what happened last year, even in an adverse situation with a different coaching staff and so many things that went against the Panthers, went against him a year ago. We have to take all of it in totality before coming to any sort of determination on whether he should be back next year or not. And I'm still leaning towards that should be the case. Like, today does not lead me to believe that it shouldn't be the case. But let's let it play out the next 3 weeks to see if he continues to play and progress the way that Dave Canales did, Morgan's organization want him to progress. So today obviously was a setback for Bryce. 4 turnovers. Simply, we could end it right here. That's why they lost the game, but we're not going to end it as I talk to you at least 23 more minutes here on this Sunday here on YouTube, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. But Maris Leafau stepping in for Damarion Overshown, who tore basically every ligament in his knee on Monday in that game against Cincinnati. I hate that for him. He gets the peanut punch on Bryce, who had shook Micah Parsons. You're going like, oh, okay. And then next second, you're like, oh no. Bryce fumbles, ends what was a 13-play, 68-yard drive with the Panthers. Were in the red zone of Dallas, looking like they're going to go ahead, get that score, whether it been a field goal or a touchdown, to take the lead in that first quarter, where they bled 8:24 of that clock. So to bleed that much of the clock, to be able to get down the field on a nice scripted opening drive and to have that fumble, that's tough. That takes 7 points off the board right there in that situation. And Jordan Lewis, he gets a deflection to a throw over the middle to Adam Thielen on a slant route that was intercepted by Eric Kendricks. Greg Olsen, who was on the broadcast today on Fox. It's always nice to have Greg on it. He's on the number 2 team with Joe Davis on Fox. And it's nice because obviously his relationship with Carolina, having played here, still living here, he has a more intimate knowledge of what goes on in that building with this team. And to be able to hear from him instead of listening to some of the other analysts who still do a good job, it was great to see. And Greg broke it down pretty simply. 3 different slant routes. One by Jalen Coker on the immediate inside. The next one to Adam Thielen. The next one on the outside was JT Sanders. He was pointing out it was no to Coker. He's not open. Should have been no to Thielen. And you have Sanders open on that 3rd down. Bryce opts to go to Thielen. And you can understand why, considering that he's been his guy going back to last year, going back to last week. Totally get that. But that was the wrong decision. And that leads to an interception and a preventable play that should have gone to the outside to Sanders and continue to drive, and maybe the Panthers score. So 2 clear turnovers that were on Bryce Young in this game, but still Carolina had an opportunity. They're down 10-0. Dallas is going down the field, trying to go up maybe 13, 17-0, which probably puts the game away if they go up 17-0 before halftime. Carolina only had 94 yards so far offensively in that game. Then you see Cooper Rush drop it. Just, I guess it was Riku Dowdle. He was like doing a kind of a handoff to him, pulls it back, goes off his hip. He fumbles the ball. DJ Johnson jumps on it. Carolina's got a new lease of life. Next play, 83 yards down the field, blown coverage to Jalen Coker. And people were telling me he didn't have a lot of speed. It looked like he had some speed there as Jalen Coker gets the 83-yard touchdown. And the Carolina's right back in it. It's 10-7. You get the ball back after halftime. You're thinking, all right, here we go, momentum. Let's get things going. And then, unfortunately, on that very first play, of the second half, Bryce Young fumbles, and Damian Lewis was immediately beaten. Oso Zigazua, who was just a monster in that third quarter. The Dallas pass rush really was just great in the second half. They get the Bryce, he fumbles. That leads to more points. He has an interception later on in the game when it's basically garbage time. They're only down 30-14, which ends up being the final score. And if they go down and score, get 2-point conversion, it's a one-possession game. And who knows? As we have seen the last 3 weeks prior against KC, against Tampa, and against Philadelphia, the Panthers kept coming back down the field with an opportunity to potentially win those games and couldn't get it done. Maybe this would have been the Sunday where they got it done against Dallas with the interception thrown at Adam Thielen. It was down the field late in the fourth quarter. Like, game's already over anyways. Greg Olsen saying that the ball didn't come out on time and he didn't throw it to the inside. So the ball being late, not thrown in the proper spot, that led to the pick, the fourth turnover of the day for Bryce Young. And the Dallas only turnover one time. You lose turnover battle 4-1. You lose the points off turnover battle 10-7. And the Panthers lose this game 30-14. And you had 3 to 7 points come off the board to begin the game. And that takes the wins out your sail right then and there. You talk about energy. Well, if you score right there, it's boom, 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 and people are excited or into the game. Carolina's off to a great start. Instead, you turn it over. Dallas doesn't get anything off of that, but still, like, that's not ideal. 10 points off turnovers for Dallas again, 7 off turnovers for Carolina, and Bryce Young has the worst day he's had in a while since taking over again as a starting quarterback for Carolina. So uncharacteristic day, out of Bryce Young. And a lot of people on this Panthers team on this Sunday afternoon in this 30-14 loss against Dallas. And again, it does not wash away what we had seen from this team over the last couple of weeks, but obviously not ideal for Carolina to have this kind of regression after so many positives that they had built on and established the last couple of weeks in those close losses against KC, against Tampa, against Philadelphia, and of course in those wins at home against the Saints, in Munich against the Giants. So unfortunate to see, but still 3 more weeks to be able to build what they want to build towards in the future, to get the football right, which Dave Canales continue to talk about, and to find a way to gain more confidence in your quarterback and this team overall. So, yeah, tough setback for Carolina, but we'll see how they bounce back next week at home against Arizona. Again, uncharacteristic play from this team on Sunday. We'll talk about that. And the defense continues just to struggle against the run. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Let's see. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. How do you stay cozy during the winter months? For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or watching a movie with family is the best way to spend the month of December. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs bowing to Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers looked to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action to watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and on Max. Right back here on Locked on Panthers. Carolina Panthers falling 30-14 at home against the Dallas Cowboys. A regression from what we had seen the previous 5 weeks from the Panthers, as Bryce Young was looking like someone who had earned the right to be the quarterback again in 2025. And today, the 4 turnovers does not diminish what he's done, does not say that he should not be the quarterback, but we still need to see the next 3 weeks take what he did in the final 10 games of the season and what he did earlier this season and last year as well, all into account, and assess the options out there for the Panthers at the quarterback position this offseason to decide what they should do. And I'm certainly leaning on Bryce Young being the quarterback again in 2025. Not a great day, but really an uncharacteristic day from Bryce and from everyone involved, aside from the run defense, which we'll talk about here momentarily here on the show. Talk about Bryce again. He had 2 turnovers since week 9. And one of those was the interception throw to Xavier Legette, who apparently was injured in this game, had a groin. So that's not great. That's now like the 3rd time that we've really been concerned about injuries. Of Xavier Legette had the hamstring back during the offseason, back in the spring of OTA's mandatory minicamp that caused him to miss a lot of time there. Had the foot scare during training camp. Now he has a wrist that he needs to get figured out this offseason as far as surgery, which has potentially attributed to some of the drops that we've seen. He says that's not the case, but he has said he will hit surgery this offseason. Now with the groin, so something to look out, monitor, that we'll talk about more on Monday when Dave Canales speaks to the media after reviewing the film and getting more of an understanding of some of the injuries that the Panthers suffered today. But Bryce, again, 2 turnovers since week 9. And one of those was really a fumble. I would rather they call that a fumble than an interception on Legette. I'm sure fantasy owners and Bryce Young as well would not like to be charged with that interception on that day. He throws the pick last week, an overthrow, not a great throw at all, right before the half to Adam Thielen. That leads to 7 points for Philadelphia. He had 1 fumble that he was able to recover, at least his offensive line recovered. So he was not putting the ball in harm's way at all, really, since coming back to being the starter. And understanding week 8 against Denver, had 2 picks in that game, 1 ball where he threw it behind Tommy Trimble. Now, not quite sure whether Trimble was supposed to go inside or outside, if he ran the wrong kind of route there. Just not having that timing because Bryce wasn't the number 1 quarterback for those couple of weeks before Andy getting hurt. That may have affected it. Then the kind of underthrow to Jalen Coker as well. He had not been turning the ball over. And he had been helping this team obviously win games based off of what he did to lead him down the field the last couple of weeks. So what we saw today was uncharacteristic. It was the first time in his career he's had 4 turnovers in a game. And I know he's had some rough turnover games in the past. You go back to last year against Indianapolis, throwing those 2 pick sixes, not ideal, but he had been better. And it sucks to see. Only one of the turnovers the last couple of weeks had been his fault. And then today he has 4 of them. And every single one of them, you got to put on Bryce. Maybe Damon Lewis, you got to not get beat immediately on that play, but still your quarterback cannot fumble in that situation. Same thing with the peanut punch there with Maris Liafu to knock that out on that opening drive. Can't happen. It happened. It's not the Bryce Young that we've come to know the last couple of weeks. I'm hoping it's not to be the Bryce Young that we see in the final 3 weeks of the season, that he's able to bounce back and not trying to make too much of it. Just, can happen, and we'll see how he plays. Also, man, the team that we have seen this season has been really styled up front on the offensive line when it comes to pass protection. And that was not the case today, as Bryce Young was sacked 4 times in the 3rd quarter alone. 0 sacks in the first half, 4 in the 3rd quarter, and immediately to up the half when Damian Lewis gets beat by Oso Zigizua. That cannot happen. They have 4 sacks, 6 overall. The Panthers came in to the game only allowing 22 sacks so far this season, which was 5th in the NFL. They were top when it looked at PFF as far as their pass blocking stats. They're right there in the top 10. This was just not a day we have seen from the offensive line, where not only was it the sacks, we saw the false start penalties. Cade Mays had one. And I don't understand how center has a false start. He kind of rocked back. That's why he got it. Robert Hunt had 2. Devin Tompkins, Adam Thielen, even more unacceptable than a center is for a wide receiver to have. I mean, really, no one should ever have it. But wide receivers, come on, man. Like, how are you going to have that happen? You're looking down at the ball when it's snapped. You already know what the snap count is anyways. To have 5 false start penalties happen in this game, give up those 6 sacks, was just a bad day for the offensive line, for the Panthers offense overall. And you look at the numbers from this game, they had, let's see, they ran 20 less plays than Dallas, who ran 70 plays for 410 yards. Carolina had 50 plays for 235 yards. If you subtract the 83 yards from that Jalen Coker play, which I'm doing right now on my calculator, the Panthers only had 152 yards. 152 yards, and go ahead and divide that by 49. That's 3.1 yards per play. That's brutal. 3 plays does not even get you a first down. At that rate, they're having to go for it on 4th and 1 every single time based off of how they played outside of just that one massive play right before the half to Jalen Coker. Not the offense that we've seen. Not at all. From the offensive line perspective, from Bryce Young's perspective, the last couple of weeks, and looking at the Cowboys defensively, coming into this game after the last 3 weeks, they had 12 sacks the last 3 games. They had 6 today. They had 6 takeaways the last 3 games. They had 4 today when looking at Dallas, how they had been playing defensively compared to how the Panthers have been playing offensively, taking care of the ball for the most part. Aside from, of course, the pick last week, the fumble by Chuba Hubbard, like it was just ill-timed when the Panthers were having their lapses. Today, it was just rampant throughout the game, and this looked more like the team that we saw against Washington than the team we had seen in the previous 5 weeks leading to today, aside from the run defense, this is the run defense we have seen all year long. When having conversation about can this defense improve, sure, in a secondary, when it comes to pass rush, when it comes to run defense, no, it was not going to happen. And it's just funny. I had someone hit me up, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, about how they're struggling against the run. I was telling them, like, dude, this is just who they are. If we're sitting here 12 games in the season, it's just not going to turn around. And heading to today, we had talked about this on Crossover Thursday with Marcus Mosher, that they, meaning Dallas, had gone to Rico Dowdle, the Asheville native, University of South Carolina Gamecock, to be their lead back. No more of Zeke, no more of Dalvin Cook, which is insane. They even thought that was going to work in 2024 anyways. Rico Dowdle was going to be the guy. And Rico Dowdle, well, he went out there. He had a career day for Dallas, rushing for 149 yards on 25 carries. That's 6 yards per carry for Rico Dowdle. The Cowboys overall, 40 rushing attempts, 211 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. Another day where a team just runs all over this Ejiro Evero defense. Not having Derek Brown obviously hurts them. Not having Shaq Thompson obviously hurts them. Not having Trevin Wallace in this game today obviously hurts this team defensively. But this is just what it's going to be as far as the run defense the next 3 weeks. If Arizona, who's going to want to run the ball, James Conner, and with Kyler Murray, like, they're going to have success. We've already seen Tampa have success. We've seen Atlanta have success. It's just who they are defensively this year against the run and who they were last year. And we'll find out what decision Dave Canales wants to make after the season with Ejiro as his DC, as they give up 30 points today against Dallas. Only the third time Dallas has scored 30 points in a game this season. They averaged 30 last year when Dak was healthy and everybody was healthy. This year, they're only third time this year they've scored 30 points. So that's not ideal. Cooper Rush throwing for 3 touchdowns. Like, are you kidding me? They're going to let Cooper Rush do that. And Xavier Woods being lost in communication one time in the secondary. Another time, Cooper Rush just firing it in there between 2 Panthers. Jordan Fuller getting beat twice on the same drive by CeeDee Lamb, which will happen. I don't understand how schematically that happens. Greg Olsen did point out on the touchdown pass to him that Dallas had motion to see what the formation was as far as was it going to be a man-to-man defense or zone. They saw it was man-to-man, and for whatever reason, Jordan Fuller is matched up on CeeDee Lamb, and that's a win every single time. And Greg said, you throw that every single time to him and end up being a touchdown. So I don't know. Dave Canales' final question he was asked in a press conference was, is he still in love with or in favor of the 3-man scheme, 3-man front? And he said, yeah. So I go back to, since David Tepper forced Ron Rivera to go to the 3-4, the Panthers have been one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. And they had Luke Kuechly that year. And they've been one of the worst run defenses since 2019 going to this 3-man front. I think they need an influx of talent, obviously. Need guys to stay healthy. But it's bad. And it's not getting better. And he talked about guys he being Dave Canales, guys got to do their job. Well, they're not doing it. They haven't done it, and they're not going to do it when it comes to stopping the run based off of what we have seen through 14 games so far this season with 3 more left to go. So a lot of uncharacteristic play from Bryce Young based on what we had seen in the previous 5 games from the offensive line. And then defensively, a lot of what we've seen throughout the season. And that leads to a 30-14 loss against Dallas today. A complete regression, but does not mean that this is who the Panthers is going to be the next 3 weeks. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can place a $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And I'm guessing that after being favored for the first time in 33 games, Panthers will start a brand new streak of not being favored next Sunday at home and their season finale at home, their home finale against Arizona Cardinals. Looking at it earlier this week, it was at 4.5 as the Cardinals are favored against Carolina. Maybe will change, maybe we'll go up. We'll see how that plays out. Either way, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. A regression for the Carolina Panthers and their 30-14 loss against Dallas, and don't really want to make it more than what it is. It was a bad outing for this team. Yeah, they're 3-11. It's the 6th straight year that they've had double-digit losses, and we saw today why this is happening for a 6th straight year. They turn the ball over too much. They don't capitalize in a red zone. They cannot stop the run. When those things happen, that leads to the losses against Kansas City not getting in the red zone scoring, and the fumbles that we saw late, or at least the fumble we saw late against Tampa Bay in overtime. Then last week, the turnover before the half by Bryce, the drop by Leggett. And today, it felt like every single one of those things, the inability to have success in the red zone, even though they barely made it there. I think only twice they made it into the red zone on Sunday. The first time was on an opening drive where Bryce Young fumbles. The nice peanut punch there, or not Tampa, but Dallas gets the ball. It all kind of culminated today. Some of the small things that had cost them all became big things, and all happened in this one performance today against Dallas. So it's not really anything more than they had a bad game. We have seen improvement. We have seen an offensive line that overall has been one of the best in the NFL when it comes to protecting the quarterback. And one day against a Cowboys team that has a good pass rush that was able to tee off because Carolina was behind in the second half, it happens. You know, the interceptions that happened for Bryce, one of them, whatever, the game's basically over anyways, trying to make something happen. The other ones, you know, just that can't really happen. You can't throw that ball in that situation. You got to throw it to the outside of JT Sanders. Yeah, just tough outing. But 3 games remain in the regular season, which means 3 more opportunities to build towards next season and to figure out who can help this team moving forward. And that's the important thing. The important thing still is that Bryce Young has looked much better, even counting today, in these last 7 starts than he looked the first 2 games and what he looked like last year. That's a positive. You have 5 solid starts. You have 1 bad one today, and you got one that was, you know, whatever, below average against Denver. So I'll take 5 good starts to a bad one and a meh performance over what we had seen where it was just brutally bad the first 2 weeks. Like, he played better today, even though he turned the ball over 4 times, than I thought he played week 1 against New Orleans and how he played week 2 against the Chargers. Would you agree or disagree? I don't know. Maybe you would disagree when it comes to that. When we look over at his stats as far as passer rating, 73.4. We'll go back all the way to week 1 and see what the passer rating was in that game against New Orleans. Passer rating week 1 for Bryce Young was 32.8. So already better by double. And then looking at week 2 as a passer rating, 57.2. So he played better, at least according to passer rating today, with the 4 turnovers than he played in week 1 and in week 2. And this has been the worst he's played since going back to week 8 against the Denver Broncos. And in that game, pulling it up here as well, passer rating was a 76.9. He had the 2 interceptions, had 2 touchdown passes, a lot of that as far as the touchdowns, and just a total yards passing came in garbage time when Carolina was already out of it. Wasn't a lot that was asked of him in that game by Dave Canales in his first start since week 2. But today, like, the playbook's been opened up more. He didn't run the ball as much. I think that's a product of not being able to stay on the field, having those turnovers. There's not much else to say at this point. Like, they didn't play well. This is not a good football team. Totally understand this, but they have gotten better. And Mike Parson was saying, at least he told, I think, Pam Oliver, whoever, on the Fox broadcast, that the Panthers were a 3-10 team playing like a 10-3 team. Well, no, today they were a 3-11 team playing like a 3-11 team. And we saw all the reasons why, with their inability to not have a false start, to hold on to the football, to protect the quarterback, and to be able to stop the run. Like, all of that came together and led to this performance. But today's regression does not wash away what Bryce did the previous 5 weeks, does not wash away what had happened even the first 2 weeks. It's still a continued evaluation of the quarterback and his franchise as a whole heading into 2025. They can beat Arizona next week. They can beat Tampa the next week after that. They can beat the Falcons. Lord knows they can beat the Falcons in week 18. It can happen. Just can't do the things they did today, which is a pretty simple way to put it. You play better, you'll win. In the NFL, you turn the ball over 4 times, you're going to lose more times than not. And that's really the story here for Carolina as they fall 30-14 at home against the Dallas Cowboys, falling to 3-11 on the season with 3 weeks remaining here in 2024. But it's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesday I'll be back once again answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter or X to get those questions into me right now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. I'll be back with you on Tuesday as we'll continue to break down this game, listen to what Dave Canales had to say on Monday, and review the keys to victory.